I'll zoom in.
I'm gonna shut the doors just because things.
Maybe who hasn't been here in a while is Eric.
You know what, Eric and Russ.
Oh, yeah, let's keep him out of here. I don't care if that's recorded or not. I think on the record with that. That'll be fun. I remember sweeping the floors of a venue in Somerset County for an Oz event we had the next day on a call before we had Zoom here. I was like, what are you doing? I'm doing it. Yes, I.
That was, we appreciated you being there. All right, let's go ahead and get this meeting started. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please remain standing. We're going to have a moment of silence. This moment of silence will be for our first responders. Thank you all. Have a seat, please. And please do remember those tomorrow as we celebrate the anniversary of 9/11. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the public workshop, Tuesday, September 10th, 24. And the Zoom public is asked to remain muted. I don't think anyone is on Zoom right now.
They are not.
And anybody in person will be given first opportunity to comment and ask questions on the agenda items that require a board vote. The meeting is being recorded live via Zoom and will be placed on the YouTube channel for viewing at a later time. Under the chairman's report, the Chester County Art Walk in East Goshen will take place on Saturday, September the 28th from 10 till 4. And the yard sale was a success, even though it was moved. There's no public comment right now. We have no service reports, no finance reports, no minutes. And there is no old business. This meeting is specifically to present the proposed preliminary 5-year capital plan and other funds. And that would be on date. So before we do that, we'll just have a quick standing issue update on Milltown Dam.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Not anything new to report. I did talk to Mark Thompson briefly on the 25-mile-an-hour desire to see that at a public meeting and possible vote for the Board of Supervisors to do that. So he is getting into that. So I'm hopeful that we'll have that for an October meeting. That's probably the biggest update.
Terrific. And are there any other matters? We can cover that as well.
I can just give you the actual bond balance because it was over 900 prior to this, but with the milling charges coming through, some assorted other trash can charges and things like that, we currently have $890,000 as of today in the bond fund balance.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
We do have a couple of other matters that popped up that I need to brief the board on. So obviously Carmen Batavio did exit the municipal authority as a member. We did get interest in that position by John Stipe, who is on the planning commission. There is no conflict of interest or anything like that to serve on both. So I guess I wanted to know how the board wanted to proceed with John's willingness to serve on the municipal authority. Usually for municipal authority, we do interview the candidate and see how the board feels about them. I don't have any other candidates at this time, so I could see if John's available as early as next week for the meeting or October 1st. I hope it doesn't go to October 15th, but I obviously have to see his availability as well. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that matter or how we want to proceed.
I think that if I think it would only be fair to have Barbara and be able to have the opportunity to interview him, even though he's sitting on another board.
Yeah.
So perhaps the two of them, if anybody else wants to join for that interview, but at least the two of them should have that opportunity to speak with him. So,
Okay.
To be clear,
thoughts?
is John going to remove himself from the planning commission?
No, he was going to serve on both.
those are two of our biggest, ABCs. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with one person being in two. Planning is very important, and municipal authority is actually, what do they call it, an enterprise?
It's a enterprise fund. The sewer fund? Yeah,
Once we put somebody on the municipal authority, we have no control over how they spend the money.
Point made.
So I'm a little bit uncomfortable, but I'll defer to, what the rest of the board members do.
Okay.
Not an argument, but because these two boards aren't as big as the other, but Wally does serve on municipal and conservancy. I know conservancy is not as big as planning, but I hear John's concerned about the two more important ABCs.
I know Jack, who's on the board right now for the municipal authority, mentioned at our meeting yesterday that he at one time was on planning and municipal authority as well. So, how do you pronounce his last name?
I try, I'll butcher it. Yeah.
If we have a full interview, which I would recommend, with more than just, then that gives another week or two, depending on his availability, to keep the window open for a potential additional candidate. And then
Yeah.
that might allow the choice
Sure.
for him to choose which to serve on.
The only other concern I do have, is it is, as everybody just pointed out, an important board. So I do, I would like to get that. I hear everybody's concerns. I would like to get that filled sooner rather than later.
Sure.
Just a thought.
Well, why don't we have you reach out to John and ask him when he could possibly come in for an interview at the soonest opportunity, perhaps next Tuesday?
Okay.
And then,
Would the board prefer, I'm thinking if you interview him, then we can have him, not at that night's meeting, but at the following meeting, just to give time to digest the interview.
digest and maybe.
In other words, not have the
else.
vote that specific night.
Yeah, and that way,
Yeah,
if anybody
That's
else
the other
steps up,
piece. Okay.
then we can have a little bit of a buffer there for somebody else to step up and interview as well.
Okay.
Is everybody okay with that?
Okay. And then lastly, on any other matter, Dave and I were talking today, Portnoy, who we use for delinquent accounts for our sewer and trash. Their contract is technically up at the end of the year. We can continue without action from the board based on how the contract's written. But if the board were to want to exit the contract, we need we need to give them 90-day notice, which means we'd have to put it on the agenda next week for you to vote on getting out of the contract. So Dave and I are not recommending that. We think it's going well. We are getting percentages as far as outstanding amounts that we haven't gotten in the past, and we aren't getting any overall complaints about Portnoy on a mass basis. So we're not recommending exiting it. But again, if the board wants to entertain that, we would need to know.
Dave, do you have any numbers for us? Have you got any?
Yes, I do. So since we first started transferring files over in May 2022, Portnoy has collected and sent, and this is as of the end of June, $96,000 out of the $246,000 that we sent them, so 39%. And just taking that action, we collected an additional 20%. So we definitely collected a lot more than we thought we would. We're getting ready to send them another round. So kind of depending on what the board advises, we wouldn't send additional accounts if we were going to withdraw. But we've asked for additional reporting to see where they are in the accounts, how many on payment plans versus who's been leaned, how many liens, things like that, and they've got it to us within the next month.
What's their fee, Dave?
They have 0 fee to us except for the cost of the actual initial letter to communicate with the resident.
Well, how do they make money? I don't.
Because they had on attorney's fees and charges based on how the people progressed through it.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was that total number again, Dave?
They've collected $96,000 on 246,000, so about 39% total.
For what it's worth, I'm one vote, but I'm in favor of keeping them because that's $96,000 that we probably wouldn't have had if we continued
Yeah, a lot of
Say
people.
what?
in-house.
I did have a resident, who was upset with the Portnoy collection, got an email late last night, responded today, over 200 municipalities. I thought it was odd that a township would use a a debt collection service. And I said over 200 municipalities in Pennsylvania use this one in particular. And the reason for it isn't to play hardball with residents or customer ratepayers. It's because we don't have the staff to do full-time collections. That's really what it comes
Well,
down to.
let's be clear, those counts get pretty high up there before we send it to court now. So.
Yeah.
I mean, there's ample time for us to work directly with these individuals prior to it going to delinquency in the court.
Yeah, it doesn't even get considered until 180 days delinquent.
And when you work with that person, do you sometimes cut them a little bit of grace in certain situations?
If the account's already been passed, there's nothing we can do. But we do make sure before we send accounts that
Mhm.
if there was any questions about billing or usage and things like that, then we get that cleaned up ahead of time, make sure that all the interest rates that were charged were correct, and you didn't charge interest on late fees and things like that, because the court not double checks all that as well.
Very good, thank you. All right,
And,
so,
and again, there is no vote if we just want to continue status quo. The only vote would be next week if you wanted to withdraw. So.
I was just gonna say, I'm in agreement with Cody. I think that that's $96,000 we wouldn't have had in the coffers, without a lot of our own legal fees. So I appreciate the fact that there is an organization that does that for us. So I would not want to get rid of them myself. Thoughts, John, Barbara?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay,
So I
thank you.
don't think there's any action then.
Nope.
Okay.
All right,
so-
that is all I had, so we can move on to
Great.
the.
So everything is cleaned up until here we are. We're still 5 minutes early starting the presentation. So Dave, the floor is yours once again.
Yep. Let's come down. So you're starting with debt slide. So just to give everyone an idea of where we're at with our total debt and the breakdown between general fund and sewer debt. 40% of our outstanding debt is for general fund and 60% are for sewer notes. Now, as of 2033, that $1 million a year for sewer will drop to 400,000 and then drop all the way down to the low 200,000 in 2034. So you can see with the scheduling of sewer rates, looking to see how any increases play out. It'll help us be self-funding a lot more once we get out to those levels, if we can make it that far with natural recurring replacement and structural maintenance, that sort of thing.
Dave,
Yes, sir.
sewer fund, sewer operating fund, is that totally funded by, fees? User
Yes.
fees?
Yes, the sewer operating fund as well as the sewer capital reserve fund are both funded by user fees.
So we have no money in there, from the township.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Nearly $500,000 is paid annually until 2037, and that's for the outstanding general fund obligations. These are the 2017 bond funds, which paid for not only part of the sewer, which was the West Goshen Westtown Way pump station improvements, as well as capital improvements to the West Goshen sanitary treatment plant, but also Milltown Dam renovation, which we are nearly complete with, Hershey Mill Dam removal and the park over there, which we are done. Paley Pike Trail, which is completed as much as we've done so far. The East Goshen Township Park Playground. And as I said before, $890,000 is our current fund, but you can go to the next one. Okay, so give you a little bit of idea. So the capital improvement program is based primarily upon. We use this for, it's the capital reserve fund, and we'll use it, it could be capital reserve fund, it could be sewer reserve fund, we could be grants, 2017 bonds that we use, or the infrastructure sustainability fund, which was set up 2 years ago. It's replacement for buildings, vehicles, windows, doors, HVAC, roofs, etc. And these are all based on a fixed asset schedule that we have. So we put away dollars each year into the cap reserve from the general fund, based on when each piece of truck or equipment was purchased, what the purchase price was, the assumed inflation rate, and the useful life expectancy. That tells us about how much we need to put away each year so when we come to you and say that we should spend this amount of money, we have that amount of money in the capital reserve fund to spend. So far, that's been working well, and we've had no issues with that. Our current balance on the capital reserve fund is $4,570,790. And we have yet to collect on the $380,000 payment for the grant that we have for the Hershey Mill Dam Park. So that would put us almost at 5 million. Currently, if you want to go over, and we'll go through administrative. I have penciled in about $15,000. We know that we need between 12 to 15 computers replaced. Based on the schedule we went through with Help Now, our new IT vendor. I've gotten a 1-year warranty on our current existing 2016 server. That will expire next year, but should get us until 2026 to spend on a server. I'll work with them to see what kind of dollars that will be.
And just to comment on that real quickly, most of the computers that we were getting rid of, they have Windows 10. Microsoft is basically ending support for Windows 10 in October 2025. And these computers are too old to accept Windows 11. So we're gonna have to upgrade them.
Does that include some of the ones that we have? Any of the supervisors have,
No, this is strictly desktops here.
just the desktops, okay? A quick question about the windows. So do any of our windows in this building open and close?
No,
Oh, I thought you meant Windows as a Microsoft.
So sorry, switching to the building.
we're in the administrative.
We're switching to the building, under the, township building windows.
None of the rooms that I've been.
So none of the windows open or closed, and they don't have screens or anything. Are any of them currently leaking?
Not that I know, we had an issue in the basement, but that was repaired by
That was
Public Works.
Taken care of. Because $100,000 is a lot of money to spend even in 2026. I'm just wondering if that's something that can be deferred until we start having issues.
Yeah,
So-
certainly, I can work with Mark on that. I
Is that
mean, this
something
is,
that
this
we-
is for the,
Well, how
this is
about,
one of those things where it's per the schedule.
Right.
And it was actually scheduled for 2025, and I pushed
Right.
it to 26 at minimum because
Right,
it's not a high priority.
would it be possible to spread that out and do a few windows each year? With $25,000 a year for 4 years instead of.
We could investigate that and see the cost difference between it.
And
Or
then
even in
you-
one floor versus in a second floor.
right.
Exactly.
That's, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and the reason I say this is because if they ain't broke, why are we replacing them? And I don't want them to get to the point where they're not effective anymore. I mean, if the rain is coming in, then we have to replace them, of course, or repair them as needed. But I'm just thinking, this is one of those things where there are no moving parts. If there are no moving parts, maybe it's something that we can consider a deferral of sorts. Thank you.
You may be a good engineer.
And I agree with all that. I know underneath the infrastructure, blah, blah, blah act, there's some type of a kickback or a tax rebate for the windows, for new windows.
Usually I can get a credit and at least personal taxes.
So just personal, nothing that we
I
can,
don't know, well, we don't pay taxes.
yeah, I just didn't know if we would get any type of a kickback, but I guess you're right, so. All right,
No, I mean, you might get it depending on how many, the only thing with staging it out is when you talk to the contractor, it's kind of like at home, if we pay for this many, do we get this many free and all that kind of what we would be bargaining back and forth with.
So this would be a
Co-stars or-
contractor, this would be a contractor rather than Public Works.
Yes.
Yes, it would either be bid or we would look at co-stars.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
We've got the overhead doors for the garages on there, and then also an HVAC units. Large format scanner, I don't think we really need one of these, at least until 2027. My understanding is that it's not all that, old. So I can follow up on that one as
What's
well.
that for the big,
So
maps that we get from folks?
engineering plans, maps,
Yeah, that's
things
the
of that
codes.
nature.
All right.
And all of these items would be taken from the capital reserve fund.
Just out of curiosity, the AC units, it says 3 units, is that 12,000 a piece? Is that 12,000 for 3? I mean, 12,000 for 3 of them seems like a
Total.
bargain, but,
That should be total.
and where, are they on the building
On the
or
roof.
our roof?
Yeah.
Here in this building.
We have most of them kind of on I guess that's the lunchroom, Public Works starting to be set
Okay.
before we get through.
Okay, but it's on this building.
Yeah,
Sort of, okay,
They have, I think we have.
it's not Public Works.
No, we've got 8 to 12. of these. And those are all in different areas of both buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Next slide. The Public Works expenses. This is usually the biggest one because of the cost of trucks and equipment. So right now, the first cut that I got with Mark is for 2025, looking at a dump truck, an F-550 instead of a 350, would fit with a plow and spreader. Final payment on the gap vac truck, which is vacuum truck. I sent Barbara a picture. It's Blue Bucker actually had one out at Willow Pond. You can see where they were using it. It was pretty impressive to see it and how with 2 guys, they were able to do an entire job, really, and it targets exactly around the sewer pipes and the infrastructure. And you could do the same thing with digging around utilities so that you're not taking a crane and digging slowly or having a guy with a shovel dig down. It's, you know, that thing with the suction, they have an air gun and it blows it. So once you've dug in, you clear it out with that, and then that sucks it all up, and then we could drop it at Mill Park, Milltown, for just to have extra sod dirt.
Yeah,
Dave,
Yes, sir.
how many dump trucks do we own?
Say 5. I think we're at 5.
Well, we're buying one this year. And you have 5 more scheduled in 25 through 29.
Yeah.
That's 6. Do we have to buy 6 trucks one year after another?
No, they're based on the way we scheduled them, we put them in this way. Year to year, it's kind of tough because we don't know how long it's gonna take to get them. That's the real crux of the problem. It could be, I mean, even the F-350s that we got took over 2 years. So we went for them in 22 and we just got them early this year. So the hard part is if we don't approve it and go for it, unless we want to do it in the next year's budget, then we don't have the authority to say, yes, we'd like to purchase that, put an order in for it.
But are these new purchases without replacements?
No,
Or
these are
These are
replacements.
replacements. I just want.
So there's no offset to what the cost would be for what we would get for our dump trucks when we resell them. So that's not included in this number. But it's a fair question.
Thank you. Yeah, it's still 6 dump trucks.
when are we gonna replace them again?
Well, I'm supposed to meet with Mark this week to go through all this and go over the garage. So this is kind of a rollover and a first pass.
Replace
should
again.
have- They're always replacements.
What,
We're not
you mean
buying
beyond
new ones.
this?
Yeah, so if we own 5 dump trucks.
Mhm.
And we are going to be replacing one of these 5 for the next 5 years. We're gonna be replacing one of them. And so at some point, we might have 5 or 6 in the fleet.
Mhm.
And then sometimes we might have 4 in the fleet or 5. So when are we gonna be replacing the ones that we buy in 25, 26, 27, 28, 29?
Yeah, I mean, we would
Does that
have
be
to,
like a
we would have to,
18-year replacement?
yeah, we would have to get an estimate, just a very rough estimate of Mark of what he thinks.
For putting the money away, we usually do 15 years on the truck.
15 year on the
dump
truck.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's good.
So we're hitting the 15 years then.
Yeah.
I know this is only preliminary data there, but I'd certainly like to see, if we can stretch that out a little bit. I have no idea what the trucks look like. I have no idea what the mileage is on the trucks, or how often or how hard they've been used. But I certainly, this is, if I'm correct, and there's one in the budget this year, which I think there is. This is 6 trucks in 6 straight years.
Yeah, I'll go over and get all the information.
Okay, well, you know what I'm looking for.
John, just so you know, I texted Mark, so how many dump trucks do we own? He says 8 big dumps, 1 baby dump.
8.
Okay, well, if they have to be replaced, they have to be replaced, but I'd certainly like to see if we can stretch it out a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll get them, because I'm in the process of working with Kevin and Steve Walker over there to make sure our lists are exactly the same, because between John and Chris Boylan doing it and what Steve has in his report, what we actually use the capital for. We're fine tuning it right now, and especially looking at Kevin moving forward, so I'm gonna go over to the garage and get make sure we've got all the updated bins in my spreadsheet as well. Make sure we have all of the actual years of all those trucks correct and
I would ask that you do the same thing with the chipper and the paver. We probably need them. I know they work hard, but to put them both in the same year is a little uncomfortable too.
Oh, I should have clarified this at the beginning of this conversation, just for public consumption. Everything we're talking about tonight, as far as numbers, and everybody else knows this, but does not affect the numbers in the general fund. This is all other funds, so when anybody online is looking at general fund numbers, moving these numbers around has nothing to do with the general fund. So I just wanted to get that on record since we're online tonight.
Thank you for.
yeah, that's
Well,
a
that-
clarification.
Although my impression is the general fund feeds the capital improvement program, doesn't it?
It does. If we stick with primarily replacements only, it's a pretty regular schedule.
Mhm.
And I know that between $300,000 to $400,000 is sufficient each year. Now, with the addition of the gap vac truck, once that's fully purchased, it'll go up. To make sure that if we wanted to be able to replace that, if we determine that we don't want to replace it, then we would put that money away.
Thank you.
So I would like to ask about the chipper. So I'm curious if we had replaced it. We had asked Mark to defer a chipper a few years ago, and then literally within 2 months of that deferring, a tree went through that had a metal spike in it, and it completely wrecked the chipper. So then we purchased one on a more urgent situation at that point. I can't remember if that was 23 or 20, I think it was 22. And so is this chipper that he's asking for this chipper in 26? Is this a larger chipper? Is it a
Yes.
different chipper? Is it in
This-
addition to what we have?
This is considerably larger. We actually rented one to be able to do
Oh, okay.
some of the chipping jobs that the smaller one was unable to do. And we would, in discussions with Mark and talking to the guys, we would probably keep the old one as well to do the smaller jobs, so that we could attack 2 places at once.
Oh, like in a storm situation with a one hit.
Yeah, and you know,
Doesn't even have to be a storm situation nowadays with the amount
amount
of
of
trees.
branches and things, especially if we go and, say Blazinski doesn't pick up and we pick up all the stuff, well, we've got to do something with all that. Don't get it in town. So we take over the chipper, we shred it up. But those are good for branches. It can't do full trees. I mean, we're talking like this big. And the one that I saw them that they rented, it could take stuff like this without
Okay,
blinking.
right, thanks for that.
And it does get a lot of use. I think we've spent over 160,000 on trees already this year.
Okay.
But I will double check on that on the year on that. Other questions on public works? All right, park expenses. So Jason gave me a good write-up on, they rented a foam cannon for some special events. And the cost is about $600. So his idea and request was to buy one, for $1,750. Use it for special events, be able to rent it out to families who are interested. He had a lot of interest for people to be able to use them for parties.
What is it doing?
Foam cannon, oh yeah, you use them like, in conjunction with bounce houses and things like that. You have a foam party. I mean, they use them at parties and they spray, you just hook it up to a water line and then they've got like a soap sudsor and it just knows better than I do. You saw it in action, right?
Yeah, it's like,
Creates a ton
it's
of,
like bubbles.
yeah, it creates a ton of, like you were in a bathtub, with suds.
Well, I'm not gonna get hung up on that, but the next number down, I want an explanation.
How much could you possibly rent something like that out for?
Well, we rented one for $600, so,
So you could probably rent it out for a lot less money and not just recoup the money.
yeah, we could probably just rent it out for a couple
Okay.
hours and still get a couple $100.
Oh, that's great, okay, all right, there we go.
Let's see if I can find Jason's, So I was talking to Jason about, other kind of projects that we might be able to use bond money for, since we have 850,000 roughly.
I thought it was 890.
What's that?
890 or 850?
I thought it was eight.
Told us
890?
you told us 890,
You said
so I'm just
890.
nervous with 40,000.
You said it's 890.
Okay, yeah, that's 890,
Huh?
because I pulled the actual number. Oh yeah, so we went from about 925 down to 890.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
that
Okay, I
was
just want to
it.
make sure.
So I asked him what the biggest bang for our buck could be, what kind of things that people had voiced, in the park, and he said, well, the park's gone from an average, I mean, this is probably just before the pandemic, he said about 475,000 visits a year, and now we're over 600,000. So that's, over 25% increase in number of visits. If anybody ever goes over to the park, you know that people are waiting, there's not enough stalls. We don't have any of the more modern, there's no changing room. There's not really enough room or a table to do anything like that for a child. Everybody over there is mostly for the playground or walking, and either needs a restroom or needs to clean their kid off, or at least change them. I mean, the age range from, because of the way they did the park, it ranges from little tiny kids playing in the sand all the way up to, 12-year-olds playing on the gym equipment. So these are very, very rough numbers. We did, from the time when I put this together to today, reached out to Wes Whiteland, who just did one. And there's a difference. You can do a construction, or you can do a prefab. You could have a contractor with engineers do it, or you could get basically a plan, the thing's dropped and it's already done. So you have minimal engineering, work to do. Wes Whiteland's was 500,000.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, but we don't
can
have
build a
any-
house for $500,000.
And
Um,
again, this is bond money, so regardless of this project in particular, we gotta start talking about that particular money and what we do with the bond money as well.
And along with that, I did reach out to PFMAM. They had concerns that it should be spent within 2 or 3 years. They were worried about negative arbitrage, which is you're not allowed, since we don't pay taxes on the bond money that we got. We can't get more in interest. So the 5.5% interest rate that we've been getting all this money on, they were concerned, of negative arbitrage where we would have a tax payment coming up. So I reached out to Pliget and had them do an analysis for me so I could tell the board, we are or we are not in danger of that, and we are not. It doesn't look like we're that close. So even though they recommended 2 to 3 years, we could have more time than that, but it's very unusual since they were dispersed in 2017 to be here 7 years later and still have $1 million almost.
The one thing I wanted to add to is that in conjunction with this potential project, but it's also a project within itself. We were looking at, I started the conversation with Aqua today because I think internally in talking, we really think the time has come to start looking at public water for the parks over there. Obviously, we do the testing for the groundwater that we have, but I'm becoming increasingly uncomfortable with having that water over there with all those visits. So I think regardless, we need to start having that conversation with Aqua about the public water line, how we get it, the cost, and could possibly be done. The numbers aren't here for that yet, but can possibly be done in conjunction with this project, but also lead to other things within the township park to be able to use for public water.
So what do we have now? Well water?
Yes.
and it only recently has tested safe. for
Yeah.
drinking.
It
That makes me
tests,
feel great. I've been drinking it for years.
it always
Yeah,
fails,
pretty
and then we have to get paid to get it up to standard. It's almost monthly.
Yeah, you
Um,
only drinking when it's safe. They turn it off when it's not.
It's all right to put money in the budget for this, but this should come before the board before any money is actually spent.
That's, yeah, I mean,
Of
that's,
course, we get, here were the checks here were the checks we paid this month.
Yeah, no, this would be
No, this
something where
project-
we would need to go out to bid, go to CoStarz, bring
Yeah.
it for the board, have multiple ideas, narrow it down. I mean, this is in very early stages. It was just kind of internally and talking with staff and saying, what is a good use for some of this money? It's already earmarked for park renovations, so that accounts for the bond usage. And then also, how much would it be, finding that out, how many people would be behind it in the public, how many people would it benefit, that when we were also thinking about public water. I'm not gonna wanna pay an aqua bill for the park. But it's kind of upsetting to see us continually fail those tests and have to get it up to a standard just to drink it.
Would it be possible to look at, staying on the well water and, putting in some sort of, filter or something like that?
I don't know, I'm not a water specialist, but it's something that we could ask about.
Because aqua's gonna suck us.
And it'll continually go up year after year.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask a couple questions on the park. Number one, Dave, you were going to work on a park, specific budget, right?
Yes,
Okay, is that underway?
it was in the general fund budget, the budget by department.
In here.
Okay, I didn't read that part.
These, no, that was
It was last week.
last week.
What was it there?
So this park budget
No,
is really
well,
just.
I
capital.
remember that last week, but I asked you to specifically tell me, where's the money that comes in from Friends of East Goshen?
Oh, right,
How much is ours and how much is theirs?
yes.
We typically get 25,000 out.
I don't wanna, I wanna see it on paper, please. What I've been
Okay.
told is that the park costs us almost nothing except for salaries. And I wanna see if that's true or not. I wanna see it's hard numbers.
No, I would say that's class participation. The park costs money
The
because.
park costs I'm sorry, I should be specific. I'm talking about the recreation, not the park.
Yeah, it is all in that general fund budget,
I'm sure it
by
is,
line. How do you want to see it?
by line, by contribution. How much do we take in? How much do we get from Friends of East Goshen? And what's the cost on the bottom line for recreation? Can you
Oh.
break recreation and park separately?
It is, so the park part is under Public Works because they do all the maintenance. Anything that gets a fee and any costs associated with that is in the Parks and Rec budget.
And
And you'll see,
Public
here's the
maintenance-
revenues and here's the
public
expenses.
maintenance during the work is one of those things where we pay ourselves, and I have trouble following the budget.
No, we don't. That's part of what the township does.
Yes, I
we don't.
understand.
Yeah, so we don't. I don't understand.
Okay, so you want Friends of East Goshen broken out.
Mhm.
You want to know, do the recreation programs pay for themselves? And you want to see line items for the recreation programs and
The revenue.
expenses. So revenue and
That's
expenses
what the park budget is.
for specifically for the recreation department.
That's
I'm
what
saying.
the Parks and Rec budget is.
All right, well, I'll come in and see you.
Okay.
My second
Is that what it was?
question is, Milltown, the Milltown School Park.
Mhm.
There's still not a umbrella on top of the area that's supposed to be shaded. I went down there last week and it's just a bunch of spines, sticking out from the central pole. We don't have the cover. So that
Okay,
was,
that's news to me.
okay, well,
We'll take a look at it with Jason.
yeah, please. We were promised that as part of the money that we spent on that. They said it will come in a little later, but we thought we'd have it for the summer, and it's not been down there for the summer.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would like to just point out that the restroom facilities by that big pavilion, if you've never been in there, go visit. It's awful.
They
One-
go in
one and
there
done.
regularly.
Oy.
They're not nice. They should be
not.
refurbished. I agree. Although I've never seen a line.
I've seen a line there many times and,
Maybe you go into a different part of the building.
I do go into a different part of the building for sure. And there is no place to change a child and there's no place for a handicapped person to be able to get into the facility in that part of the park.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that is a problem, especially when you have handicapped family members who want to go use the park and need to be near facilities. So That, it was not at the time required to be ADA compliant. So it was built in like, what, 1990 or 91, I think.
Yeah, 1981.
81. So so I would be in favor of seeing us look at a project in that regard, but like Dave, I really don't want to be on the hook to Aqua. So if there's any way that we can possibly use well water to continue services there. And then the problem though is the drinking water. We really should have some kind of drinking water, potable water there. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to look at how you can treat the well water better than we're treating it now, but also I'd like to get, I don't know, I have to see who I would talk to about this, but I also want to get some sort of opinion or analysis on, even if we do everything we can, what are the drawbacks or possible issues that could come up with the well water, even if we do everything we can. Because again, it is a concern of mine from a non-financial standpoint.
Yeah, if we did have public water, all the testing and everything, it goes to Aqua. We spend over $500 a month just in testing, just for the park.
wow.
Madam Chair, I just had a couple things too about this, if you don't mind.
Please.
I know last week we had talked about potential Bow Tree Bridge connector. Even if I don't see that on here, so I don't know if that's something that we're still, and maybe I missed it in a different portion, but even if we were to spend the 250,000, we'd still have 640 left in the bond fund. And if the bond fund, I understand that we have, money sitting in there, we get money for interest, but I'd like us to continue with either moving forward the Bow Tree connector, see how much it actually would cost. And also John's Pocket Park down there. We had talked about the sort of like, I don't know, was it a wood chip trail or?
Yes, trail.
Yeah, I don't know how much that would cost, but I think that would be the final, along with the tarp, which I'm glad you mentioned because I was going to mention that. And then the path at that point, then it would be complete.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much that would cost. So I would be in favor of at least finishing off the Milltown Pocket Park and then, us moving forward on how much the actual cost of the Bow Tree connector would be.
What is the trail that we're still gonna do with the Milltown?
Milltown, so it's about 2 acres of ground, and there is a kind of a naturally cut trail that that people just have used over the years. They just have kind of created a little trail
On the hillside?
on the hillside and around the park. So Mark said, eventually he'd get up there, clean it up, and put down wood chips up there. And so you're right about that, Cody. That was something that was another thing that was promised.
Because then we can finish out our promises over there.
Right?
Well, and I can check to see if that's bond fund eligible.
Yeah. But if it's done in-house
Is it-
though,
It was all
Right.
done in-house before, so,
because I think,
Okay.
I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, it seems like a pretty simple project.
yeah.
Another big
Particularly
one.
if it's-
I don't have that in the.
Oh, no,
And
what I'm
that-
saying
that
is
would be in the general fund.
it might not be a budget item like we're talking about with some other things. That's what I'm getting at. So I'd have to talk to Mark about it and see what he thinks as far as an in-house capability.
And we also need to find out if the sun sail was actually ordered in 2023 and paid for, or was Jason waiting for it to come in this year and to pay for it this year?
Cody, as far as the Bow Tree connection, yeah, we can put, any kind of, whatever kind of a placeholder you want to put in, at least in 25 or 26, whatever timeframe you want to look at. I know the very earliest estimates that I got from Panoni, before working with the Futurists was on the low side, $300,000, and that was the bridge from the open space that's the townships over to the wetlands to connect kind of to where that, pavilion dock kind of goes out.
Mhm.
But obviously, to get the costs, Panoni's gonna want they would have to do a full engineering.
How much would that cost?
Wetlands tests, I don't know. I'd have to ask them.
So the line item that we have in the budget for this year, would that consider what you're talking about right now, the full-fledged? The 12 or 14,000 we already have budgeted?
I doubt it would be that cheap. I think the Red Belly thing that we did at, Hershey Mill was 5,000. Just that study alone.
Do you think it'd be more?
I think it would cost more, yeah, but I can ask Nate.
I would just like to know, I just want to know how much the cost would be.
I mean, I like the idea of budgeting, if we were to go that route, budget engineering for next year, and then obviously the project that, whether it's the following year or whatever, so we can kind of see what it looks like.
Yeah, I just want to know what the cost is gonna be. We have that much enthusiasm over the deal, and we have the bond money.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not saying we have to do it tomorrow, but at least just an idea for us to plan.
Yeah, and we did have at the meeting, the homeowner was right across from that open space and the homeowners right next to that open space show up to the meeting and said they did not want it there.
Yeah.
Well, most people were receptive, but yeah, you are.
Well, everybody was receptive to a connection.
Yeah,
Now, I don't know, that still doesn't get us directly to the trail. So you get across, but you still aren't at the trail. But going down along where everybody wanted to be able to walk out and then just walk down 352. We have to get PennDOT engineering. I mean, that's gonna be a lot bigger project.
Yeah, I'm not interested in
And
that.
more dangerous,
I agree.
I don't know.
Yeah, which is why it would take so much money, because it would be, I mean, they would have to do a traffic study because there are multiple speed limits on that road just in that small area. It makes no sense.
I know it's kind of an out there question and don't everybody yell at me, but is there any chance that we can take this bond fund money that's remaining and actually pay the loan back? If we were to do that, is that permitted?
So-
I'm not suggesting it, I'm just wondering if it's something that is permitted or
Not a silly question in my opinion.
So based on the general certificate, we can, it was to provide funds for and towards capital costs of construction, renovation or acquisition of the Paoli Pike Trail, Milltown Dam, and Hershey Mill Dam, playground renovations, East Goshen Township Park improvements, and East Goshen Municipal Authority share of the capital improvements of the West Goshen Sewer Plant, and other capital projects as may be approved by further action. That would be of the board, and to pay the costs of issuance of the bonds.
so yes,
I would read that as we can use it.
just
We
wondered.
can give it to the solicitor to double check it.
no, I didn't want to go that far, I just wanted to know that was a possibility. Barbara, do you have any questions so far?
And so you know that about every year we pay about $500,000, so that would
They'll
get
pay
rid
for
of it
2
pretty quick,
years.
yeah, and that would alleviate direct general fund money.
Right. Okay, thank you for that.
So sorry, Madam Chair. So hypothetically, we could get the Boat Tree connector at its expensive cost and still get a year off our loan. Am I reading that right, Dave? The 300. It's at 890. I guess.
Not if you do the
How much do
rest
how much do we get on interest each year on that?
of it. 55,000 on the bond.
What are we paying on the bond?
What are we paying?
What's the interest?
2.7%. We pay about $500,000.
We're better off
We pay about
keeping the money.
Yeah, might as well keep the money. Yeah, you're losing it.
That's,
Well, but
that answers the question. Let's,
like all of these setups, unless bond rates change, the treasury, interest rate changes and renegotiate it. We extend it or change when we want to pay it out and change the amounts. It doesn't matter if we pay it early, we're paying the total dollar amount. It's
Okay.
outstanding.
thank you.
Imagine 2.7%. So thanks, Dave.
So
Infrastructure.
I'll relook at, the engineering, put that in the 25 budget and see if they can do a full study, what that would cost.
I'm in favor of that. And if we have to roll over the 14,000 that we had budgeted this year for it into that, I don't know how that works, but
Well, I can do all these updates and get them all for the discussion meeting next week, so we can see some of these updates if you want.
yeah, I mean, we had what, 14,000, sorry.
Meeting to meeting, I'll just do
Yeah.
like, here are all the changes to what you've been shown.
Yeah, because we had what, 14,000 for that, and then we had 400 for the Paoli Pike Trail and the cap reserve we're not using this year, so there's some just parks money we're not using.
Fair enough.
That'd just be helpful to see. Thanks, Dave.
Anything else on parks?
Nope.
All right, infrastructure and sewer. So working with Pinoni, Mike Ellis and the MA and Mark Miller, we came up with, feel good about a 10-year, 20-year is, we still have some work to see year 10 to year 20, and that probably isn't worth the effort, but we're gonna try it anyway. So this plan is informed by those reviews, and I'm gonna have Mark take another look, and assuming we can always shuffle these year to year based on need. And in addition, we can try for LSA grant money every year. I talked to the liaison and he said that he doesn't see them going anywhere in the short term, and it's a lot more competitive now because everybody's realized that there is a statewide and it's, a lot looser restrictions. But based on this schedule, there's the Stuckley Valley lining project in 25. We're actually looking at going, we got preliminary costs from, it came in lower than this, I think was some of the bids. So I think it was 330,000. Hunt Country, this one has been pushed a number of years, actually since 2021 when I got here. And I know that that is on Mark's target list to get done. So based on those, the dollar amounts that were reviewed by Mark and myself, and then also with Pannoni, that's where we came up with staging it in 25, 26, 27, 28, 29 and out, basically for the next 10 years to see what we would do, how that would affect sewer rates, and revisit it every year to see what projects are necessary, and try and keep the infrastructure in line to avoid any more expensive failures or collapses.
I just want to say the Hershey Mill Pond, which is the Hershey Mill Estates, that project would be the dredging of that pond over there on Tanglewood, I think it is.
Yeah, it's Hershey Mill Estates, but like Bow Tree, it's very similar.
Yeah, but I guess I just want to say to the board, we don't want to push that back past 2026 where it is now, because I've gotten a lot of people over in that neighborhood asking about when that project is happening, because they were promised it a while ago. It keeps getting pushed back. I think it's been on the 2026 schedule since before Dave and I have been here, and we've kept it there. But I just wanted to let you know that, because again, it has been a concern for residents over there, the way it's evolved.
And that's the one out of all of these that would be paid by the infrastructure fund money.
Yeah.
Just a question here. I don't want to speak out of turn, and I know the public works load is already super heavy. If it's coming from infrastructure fund, and I don't know if we have anything else budgeted for that next year, what if we just did it next year instead? I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but if it's just coming from infrastructure, we're not using any of the other infrastructure money for maybe other than just trees.
Well, it won't be a public works project, just a heads up.
They're not gonna do the dredging of it.
No, we don't have the capability to
Oh,
do
I thought
that
they did
in-house.
filter it. Okay.
No.
No, we hired, company, but it was a particular dredging company.
So there's no, what would be the downside if we moved it up a year? And again, I'm okay with being outvoted on this. There's
Just how many things in a single year to try and get done. I mean, I know they cut some of the paving short because of Bow Tree and all of the storms and things like that. I mean, you can always put it on the list.
Yeah.
And see if we can get it done.
I think the answer to Cody's question is, even if we aren't doing it directly and contracting it out, it still comes with a lot of administrative
okay.
stuff
Okay.
to us. So it does take up our time when we're doing these projects as kind of project managers, so to speak.
Okay.
That's the one thing.
Does it come with do you have to do a permit for the dredging?
I mean,
Can't remember if you. It's because we did have engineering on it.
yeah, I think you have to go through DEP. I don't know what specific permit. It's definitely an issue you have to talk about with the state.
Well, maybe we should consider doing it sooner rather than later then, because with the DEP and their swiftness of issuing permits, perhaps we could start that process early on in 2025. And then, like Cody said, it doesn't affect any other towns and it doesn't affect any other. So I don't see any downside in starting the application sooner. And then if we get our permit sooner than expected, then, I mean, yeah, administratively, it's a nightmare for you,
Yeah.
but would it be better for the pond to be done in 25
Yeah.
versus 26?
Just to be clear, when we're talking about permits, we're talking about some probably construction. This isn't an MS4 project.
Okay.
I just want to be clear
Right.
about that.
I understand, but the thing is, they're still not very fast about
No.
issuing their permits.
that's-
So the thing is, if the pond is dying, if the residents are concerned about that, then maybe the dredging should happen sooner rather than later, is my point.
And maybe we should apply for the permit
Yeah.
sooner rather than.
I'm on
later.
board with that.
Yeah.
Maybe next meeting, the board can decide whether or not he wants to do this, and if we do all want to do it, we should apply for the permit immediately.
Just to be clear, I don't know what permits if any are necessary.
Okay.
I remember talking to DEP, but I don't know if because it was a township property, it was just a conversation or permit, so I have to look into that with Mark.
Okay,
That's fine. Okay.
that comes first.
I don't have any other questions on this
Okay.
page. Does anybody have any other questions on infrastructure and sewer?
I have one, Dave.
Yes.
All of these expenses are funded by the Sewer Capital Reserve Fund.
Correct.
How healthy is that and how are we getting money in there?
Currently, we have $1,859,760 in the sewer cap reserve fund as of August 31st. Money gets in the capital reserve by transferring from sewer operating. So when I did the sewer rate increase and recommended doing these after talking with Mike, that should fund us hopefully through at least 2027, hopefully further, to do all of these.
Okay, thank you.
Treatment plant, please. So this is, the infrastructure plans, forecast for all of the replacement items that go into capital replacement at the sewer plant itself. So you see all the controls, and this has been on Mark's list that he came up with, and then Mike did his list independently and cross-referenced it with, Mark's. They both came up with, their own numbers, and we put them together, and they were very, very similar. Based on the timing of when it needs to be replaced, this is the schedule, which should get us close. You can see that this is all really working up to hand in hand with the sewer. So by 2032, 2033, 2034, if we get this stuff done and then $1 million of debt drops off, we have another $1 million every year to do these kind of projects without going up for more rates increases. So that was the thinking behind the long-term planning. Any questions on the replacement schedules?
Is there any particular reason so much is set in 2027?
When it was built, it was, all of that was kind of done that year. It was 20 years ago.
Should we possibly be expecting
So,
some?
so after the 20-year lifespan, that's max lifespan of those parts.
Right, so should we be expecting that those are gonna show up in 26 instead?
If they do, they
25?
do, but I don't have that crystal ball,
Okay.
you know, I mean, we're on a schedule. If something breaks,
Okay.
okay, we gotta fix it.
Yeah, yeah.
So the liquid fuel funds, we get that from the state every year. It's currently over 500,000. We try and spend as much of it that offsets, particular allowable things from the general fund. We don't know the receipts typically until we get them in September, and we haven't received it yet for 2025. So this is an estimate, basically keeping it flat with the current year. And that's why I show zero balance, because we assume we're going to spend it all. If it's not spent, you can't carry it over.
You can't count.
The capital reserve fund, this has the vehicle and computer and administrative replacements in it, only going up through 25. It looks like we're taking a hit, but we also haven't received the 380,000, which would push us back up. And all of these 25 balances are based on a 24 budget. I hope for, I don't know if it'll be the next meeting, but probably definitely the one in October, to have everything revisited again, with 24 projections and where we're at versus budget, and then rolling from the projection into the budget for 25, because we'll have a much better idea, especially once we get September actuals. I'll feel a little better about doing a full year projection. So these balances aren't necessarily 100% accurate, is what I'm saying, in 2025. It's best guess right now. The transportation fund. It's a rarely used fund. They had, the last thing we did was in 2020. Geez, was it 2020? I thought it was 2020. Must have been small. But we did the Boot Road widening. down across from the corporate park. I'm digging in to see where in the general fund, we may be able to offset some expenses by using them for traffic signal maintenance. If there's other kind of signage that we need to put up, are there any particular road projects that would qualify? It's made up of impact fees as well as non-impact fees. Impact fees were collected by land developers going back into the eighties. And so they went in and they were done through a study, calculations, engineering, and then those calculations were ratified by the state, and we got the developers to pay us certain fees for certain things. For instance, they put in a development, well, we think we may have to do a new traffic circle in front of that and put in lights, traffic lights, et cetera. How many cars is it impacting in the traffic patterns? All of that goes into it. So we have those monies. The tricky part is it was collected so long ago. What box is it in the basement where I find out what it's applicable to? The non-impact fees, we can definitely spend towards the maintenance and some road things. I think dealing with the transportation issues in the highway. It's about 120,000 of the 511,000. So the vast majority is impact fees versus non-impact fees. But still, anything that we can use to offset some of the general fund. We know looking at police, fire, and EMS in the next few years, it's probably going to be necessary.
Okay.
The sewer operating fund balances. It's usually a declining balance. The increase of rates has pushed us up some. I think we're good in 25. I'll revisit the rate calculations, but I would not foresee having to raise any sewer rates in 2025.
Wow.
The refuse fund, we are planning a 1-year renewal of our existing contract with Wilczynski / trash, what is it, trash? Waste Connections. And we met with them once. We'll probably have another meeting with them as well. Get a little more clarity out of them, but it would basically just be another COLA increase, which may be 3% in December. So looking at some of the contracts that other townships have had to go out for, I mean, some of them are dealing with a 50% increase, some an 80% increase in what they're currently paying. We'd have to revisit how we put we're already starting the process, but Mark, Derek, myself, Lynn, and whoever else, and we're gonna get a better bid spec together is the plan. And then we also need feedback on, what's better for the carrier, what gets us a better price, what kind of things. Is it the mechanical arm stuff? What do we need to go to and get feedback from everybody on those, and what's that gonna look like? I have 0 refuse fee increase for 25 budgeted as well.
Is this an area where we should consider doing a survey of our residents who are on the trash program to see if once you all determine what drives the cost, perhaps should we do a survey of those residents and ask which of these services could you do without or less of?
As far as, what kind of waste pickup, like, yard
Yeah, well,
waste?
I mean,
Because we get yard waste every week.
yard waste is
right
pretty
now.
much every week, but the thing is, if we cut back to every other week in certain times of the year
For,
for yard waste,
Okay.
if we went, instead of doing bulk trash once every month, we did it every other month, would that be something that would actually make an impact in what we're paying to Waste Connections?
it would,
And if it does, then would the residents be willing to make those concessions so that we don't have to raise our fees quite as much? And then going to mechanical arm, much as I hate the idea of it,
so
going to mechanical arm could potentially save a lot of money as well.
the things you're talking about should be put in the bid specs as far as, and the bid specs will come to the board after the internal stuff that Dave's talking about. But everything you're naming, how many days a week,
Yeah.
yard waste, bulk, needs to be spelled out in the bid specs. As far as going out and seeing how your residents feel about each one of them and how you want to word those, that's completely a policy decision to the Board of Supervisors. I don't know, I don't know if you want to do that. I don't know how much weight it's going to have, how many residents can respond, but that's certainly something you can do.
Yeah, I guess we would have to think about what threshold and how many people respond for this versus that. What is the tipping factor in making that decision? And there, unfortunately, we could reduce a lot of services and the rates are still gonna go up. That's my fear.
Oh, they're still gonna go up for sure. I agree. I was just talking about maybe not going up as much.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
There's things that they're gonna be able to do and things that they're not gonna be able to do. Making something every other month rather than every month. It's confusing, well, for the employer, it's hard to keep the workforce
It is.
when you need them 1 month and you don't need them next month, and then you need them again the month after that, you don't need them. I mean, it gets crazy for the employer. There's some things they can do, and some things they can't. If we want to save money, the biggest move would be to go to trash once a week.
That is,
And I don't think that's gonna be popular, so. I can see why Derek suggested it's a policy decision rather than something.
that's definitely a policy decision.
But yeah, do the best you
Okay.
can, that's all.
So the bond fund, this includes only the really the new restrooms and the other minimal expenses, which is why it shows the balance between 500,000 and a million. Obviously, this will change when we layer in Bow Tree, and if we talking about that, seeing what that looks like as far as costs. Sewer reserve fund, not intending any sewer rate increases for 25. This is including those capital projects that were discussed that we're showing in 2025. It's based on our 20-year maintenance plan so far. So I think we're good for next year, but it's something we're always going to keep on top of and do annually anyway, just to make sure nothing has changed majorly. The expectations and the projections are fairly sound, so that we don't have some sort of crazy surprise. The operating reserve fund, called the rainy day fund. Typically, they'd like to see, the rule of thumb is kind of 3 months of operating expenses in case of catastrophe, for the township to continue to operate, pay payroll, all sort of that sort of thing to get things done and still be able to operate as a township, provide some services. That we typically see between $1 and $1.2 million in expense a month, so that could be between $3 to $4 million. We currently have 1.7 million. So we're a little bit light, but that would have to come from the general fund, and as we all know, that that's a very tight budget. So I wouldn't advise putting any additional reserves away at this point.
Dave, could we actually transfer some of the infrastructure sustainability fund money back over to that fund so that we're more robust in the rainy day fund?
You could.
Because, I mean, I feel like it's almost more crucial to have a little bit more money, but we split off the infrastructure sustainability fund because we were so close to the maximum allowed by law in our rainy day fund. So that's why it was split. So the thing is, really, the stuff that we're using infrastructure sustainability fund money for can come out of the operating fund. There's nothing that says that we can't pay for trees, ponds, whatever we want out of stormwater out of the operating fund. And as emergencies crop up, wouldn't it be smarter to just have that money available in the operating fund rather than in this other additional fund?
It's one way or the other. I mean, I understand why they wanted to set it up. If there's an emergency, you could use the infrastructure fund money. So, but it's really just to try and stretch out and offset some of the annual expenses that you're going to see in the general fund, the tree removal, the pond that comes up, those kind of things, so that we've got a sitting amount that'll just take that, and then we don't have to dip into our actual reserves.
Dave, go over those numbers again for me, please. 30% they're asking for 3 months?
It's usually about 3 months worth of operating expenses, which is general fund expenses. And we have about 1 to 1.2 million a month.
So you want 3.6 million?
I don't want 3.6. I'm
This is
saying
best
that's what their
practice.
rule of thumb
That's
is,
the rule
to
of
make
thumb.
sure that you're very robust.
State
I mean,
maximum.
we had no problem from
Okay.
auditors or the bond fund rating people.
I guess I'm not reading this right then. The ending fund balance here doesn't reach that amount. The gray line.
Yeah, we're not gonna transfer in an additional $2 or $3 million, because where's it gonna come from?
Unless it came from,
The
unless it
general
comes from the infrastructure sustainability fund, and we just put it back into.
So-
the
fund,
fund.
or the general fund.
So
Right.
what you're telling me is we're not keeping 3 months worth.
Correct.
Not right now, no.
Most townships do not.
Yeah.
Most townships don't even have an operating reserve fund. We're one of the few that does, which is why we're one of the, what is it?
It's just kind of belt and
in the entire
suspenders
state that are
type of thing.
municipalities that have a AAA bond
Okay,
rating.
so it's not a state law or anything.
No, no,
No.
no, no, no.
The state law
That's
says you
a
can't
rule of
exceed,
thumb.
well, no, the state law says you cannot exceed this much money in your operating
I see.
reserve.
Okay,
Yeah, it's generally 25% of
Right.
your annual revenues.
But that, the
So
law
if you say
says
you're doing
don't
$12
exceed.
million a quarter, that's $3 million. That
Right.
could be your max.
Right,
okay.
Okay, ARPA funds. So we've still got roughly, I've got the sheet running. So as of the end of August, we had 35, 33 or 35. $33,413 in the ARPA funds. We can spend that in 2024 on whatever the board pleases. We can push it and spend it in 2025. All of the ARPA reporting for the monies we actually received have been dutifully filled out, sent into DCED and the government to make sure that we are keeping up with all that reporting. It has to be spent by the end of this year, but we've already spent all the amount they gave us. All of this is just interest, which we no longer have to report. So I'll do the final report next March. So it's up to the board as to what they would like to spend this on.
And we can't just transfer to general if we want to.
And what year. Well, I mean, what's the point of transferring to general or just spending it on something?
Well, what do you want us to spend it on? I know what he wants us to spend it on.
I have a thought. When people come up to that mic there, it's not a multi-directional, they have to speak into it. I think it would be really great to upgrade that mic to a multi-directional mic. The other thought that I have is when we have ABC meetings that want to sit around a table, if we're zooming, if we could add one camera so that it could, whoever's operating we would have a camera facing the table, so the table could be a split screen, you know, the dais and then the table for meetings where people are sitting at
so you're saying technology for the
Technology.
boardroom.
for the boardroom.
Well, it's funny you bring that up.
How much did he pay?
Not that funny.
No, I was going through this at home.
So,
What do you think, Derek?
no, I do want to do some additional technology upgrades to this room, and it's kind of a balancing act, because furnishing wise, the stuff's all old. But
It's fine.
I think I would rather go to technology, and I did have a conversation a few months ago with the vendor that put in the current one. No, I'm trying to think of the name, New Era Technology. And I have to look at the exact quotes and what I did, but a lot of it was actually what Barbara just brought up as far as I sort of, it's funny, we did not coordinate this.
No, we did not, because
But it was addition.
Where's your boots?
Additionally, we were looking at a big screen. We were looking at a big screen on that wall. Some of it was gonna be public works labor, so we can offset the cost with like running wires and stuff. But the problem is too, a lot of people that are a little bit older can't really see these screens. So they had recommended a little bit bigger screens for these, and then an 88, 90-inch one on the wall over there, so that, and then we can utilize that a lot of different ways. So for instance, you know, if you're doing a private meeting, you can kind of set up along that wall and have like a camera shoot out that way as well. But anyway, I guess the bottom line is I did get some quotes. on
There
some
goes
of
the
things.
restroom. $250,000 for the rest of
Yeah.
that.
How much was the quotes that you got? Just
Some of the things, it depends on what you do
Yeah.
and what you don't, but some of it was around 8 to 15 grand. I did not, the one thing I did not do, but I like the idea is the multi-directional mic. I
sure.
didn't do that. Yeah,
I don't, that's fine with me. The only problem is what size are these right now?
those are, I want to say, what is it, 65.
And going up to how big?
They were recommending, I think it was
80?
No, I think it was 75.
I don't know what 10 inches would do when,
No,
What is
no, no.
it? To
Yeah.
sit in the front row, if visibility is.
well, I don't disagree. I agree with you on that, but I'm just saying, what would upgrading 10 inches worth of this for that? I'm fine with the TVs on the side because then people can actually see it. But I don't know what 10 inches will do up here for new TVs.
Well,
Well, I think part of it was we were gonna talk, because I don't know exactly how old these are, but we were having a conversation about when they need to go anyway, so it was a matter of, well, if we're gonna upgrade them, make them a little bigger, not just for the audience, honestly, it's for people at the DIOS as well,
Mm.
so.
yeah, these weren't that old, but I mean, I would want them to be repurposed to another area. I don't want them to just go away, certainly. But I also don't know that 10 inches is really gonna make a difference, like you said, Cody. And, you know, I think we do need a multi-directional mic or 2 or 3.
The one issue I will say is that if you're gonna do something, you should do a few different things, because doing just the multi-directional mic is gonna be grossly expensive by itself.
Sure,
So we
So-
should do a multi-directional mic, do a handheld wireless mic, so that if you have a handicapped person, you can take the mic to them.
right,
And do some, like
The TV thing we're talking about.
the TV thing that shows,
Right.
does the camera.
With an additional
Yeah,
camera.
yeah.
well, I think that we had talked about potentially even with these, moving them out into the lobby for when we have overflow. So that people in the lobby can actually see. like
I think the
stand
one thing
remotely.
we talked about internally was having a couple of TVs on the side rooms in case meetings take
Yeah,
place in
that's
there.
good.
That
I'm fine with that minute. So if you move these
Yeah.
two into those and put the new TVs up here.
Yeah,
I
I
just-
think that
Oh, sorry.
in my opinion, I think that we do need. Seeing some other boardrooms, they're a little bit more technologically advanced. Some are not as far along as we are.
So I could come back with a little bit more specifics of not only that quote, but what we're talking about now, and come up with a game plan as far as specifically what we want to do.
Yeah, I'm sort of tired of seeing this ARPA fund rather than spend the money.
Well,
Let's get it going.
I know it's petty, but I just like, if we know what you want, then
board at the last meeting also wanted to do the ABC event, which is not in the current, general fund budget. That
Yeah.
might be a good use. of
Of the ABC,
spending
yeah.
some of the money to do a celebration of.
So if
ABC
we did
members.
5,000 for ABC event and 25,000 for
For
the
this.
upgrades,
There you go,
there you go.
perfect.
everyone's gonna be,
I like that idea. Mary.
Very.
Yeah,
Derek gets his TV and volunteers get the booze.
that's absolutely right. All right, so moving on to the infrastructure sustainability fund.
So this is created with the 2021 surplus that we saw. We had, we also sent 1.25 million from operating reserves to be spent for upon rehabilitation, other infrastructure without straining the general fund. We don't have any current mechanism to continually put more money into this or not.
Dave, we're collecting interest on this, right?
Yep, 5.5%.
Good.
One thing, it's the general fund, but I had cut the newsletters down from 3 to 2. I don't know what the board's opinion on that is. It's gotten up to, even though we have advertising some local businesses, which funds the creation and publication of it, it doesn't fund the mailing and the sorting and some additional costs from that company, which now is up to $3,500 per newsletter. So I don't know if we want to leave it where I've got it, where you're doing 2 next year. Or we want to
I'm fine with
do it
it.
online only, whatever the board.
Jess, would you be happy if we went down to 2?
Well, it kind of does matter because we have to look at the park and rec programs and how we're gonna advertise them in the 2 newsletters that are gonna be put out.
They're
So,
usually already,
yeah.
they're usually already either sold out or they've already gone by the time the publication comes out.
That's totally legit.
Yeah, I don't think
Right.
we, Parks and Rec, we know well in advance of what we're doing or have an idea. I mean, half of the stuff that's been in the newsletter doesn't even give, it just says go to the website or
Everybody,
contact.
everybody signs up for that communication from the township for things that are going on with Parks and Rec too. I mean, it's gotta be 85-90% of everybody gets a newsletter from the township.
Well, that's something I think that we should know is, can you find out for us, somebody find out for us, how many people are on that list of the constant contact where you're pushing out reminders to people? How many people are signed up for that?
That's easy.
Ashley knows that.
Yeah, I can see that tonight when I go on.
So,
I can go on
so,
constant
you know,
contact.
And how do we advertise for people, new people who aren't on there, who may not know that's how you get information?
We do that periodically on social media outlets and things like that. I mean, it's an uphill battle, but we definitely try to get it out there as much as possible. There's different lists too, so it's not just one list. So there's one list that is, the bulk of it, but then there's other lists as well that are smaller.
There's also some internal discussion. We're looking at working with W3 Nerds on updating the website.
Yes.
Some of those kind of things. And I was asking Ashley, are there other technologies and ways, I know Jennifer, for utility is trying to be more proactive when she's got somebody on the phone and saying, well, can you give me an email contact? Is that okay? And then we get them at and we have more information. So we're a little behind the times as far as having enough email address to communicate that way.
Yeah,
But
I
we're talking about it.
I don't want to just pass that by without saying, we're working with our current vendor to update the website. When we were initially thinking about possibly kind of going out and see what's out there, I mean, those updates can cost $30,000 to $35,000 nowadays to just switch the website to another vendor. And we're working with our current vendor to do it for free. Which means the time frame is going to be elongated because they're doing it when they can squeeze it in, but they want our business enough where they want to do it with us, cost free. So I think that needs to be said because it can be a costly endeavor. So we'll see how it works out. I'm hopeful, but just wanted to mention that.
The way I'm looking at this is the next several pages here. This is just pretty much a recap, just in a.
This is
like,
basically
short
all of the
format.
detail of everything we saw graphically,
So-
Yep.
just all the individual expense lines like I would typically give you for a detailed general fund budget.
Yep.
So that's kind of how I read it, so I don't think that we.
If there's any questions, I wanted all the detail here so people
Yeah.
can go through it and see how it's
Yep.
associated. And not just see it for the first time, especially with you and Barbara, because you guys have gotten it before.
Right,
And they're new to it, so they can ask questions about what goes into this line item.
right.
Is there any particular questions on any of these funds, different line items or anything like that? I'm happy to answer those.
I would really like to, is there anybody on the board who has any specific questions, or do you want to save them for an individual discussion?
So I am gonna on the 17th put on budget Q&A again
Okay.
on the agenda.
Good,
And we are gonna have a couple of more budget items on the agenda in that Good Fellowship and Goshen Fire will be presenting their contribution requests and just general updates, I guess. So
so,
we will have that opportunity next week as well.
so regarding the Goshen Fire Department asks, Dave, can you give us, I think that what I'd like to see, and maybe the other members would like to see as well, maybe some historic contribution requests that we have met over the past few years for Goshen Fire Department, and maybe can we see like a cost of living increase for 2020 from 2024 for the 2025 for Goshen Fire Department, to see what that would look like. So that we're kind of keeping in line with the cost of living increase.
Do
So
you wanna,
like
do you wanna go back
three-
to 10 years?
10 is probably not too, that's probably too far. I mean, it's up to you. Just use your judgment. I mean, 5 should be fine, just so we have kind of a little historic understanding of how much they've requested and how much we've given them.
Do you want a comparison to show WeGo versus
Yeah.
Goshen Fire
Yeah.
and Malvern and Good Fellowship?
If you can
Put them
do
all
it,
together, yeah.
if you can do it. I don't know that Malvern is that is that crucial, but yeah, I mean, if you can get that one in there too, that would be great, because. I mean, in this year's police budget, it's. I'm just stunned to see that the overall increase is only at 0.75%, which is very much appreciated, that they did a lot of thoughtful consideration of their expenses, their discretionary expenses that they could consider. Maybe even including a 0.75% increase for Goshen, just for comparative purposes, for us to like be able to see what that would look like too.
Absolutely.
Does anybody else have a ask for that in particular? I'd just like to see a little bit of historic requests, and then
It's always helpful to see
and then
trends.
maybe to see maybe a trend moving forward, if we were to continue to be required to give them a certain percentage, where it's going to leave us in a couple of years or 5 years.
Sure.
Thank you.
And another quick housekeeping item is just after the next, I'll have it as a new item on the agenda next week. The 2 October meetings, I think I'm just gonna have the budget as a temporary standing item, so we can talk about that as needed in October. And then obviously November, December, we have preliminary and final, so we'll have an opportunity to continue discussing. I think we do it earlier than any municipality I know, so I appreciate the conversation.
Is there any public comment? On the Zoom platform, there's nobody to join us either, so I'm gonna entertain a
Motion
motion.
to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Uh,
Okay, sorry we missed you, Pete. Have a good night.